I was thinking of listening to some music while I record, but I don't think that would be professional. It'd probably leak through the headphones and be in the recording. I'm here to talk about Hotel Transylvania 4. They don't call it Hotel Transylvania 4. They call it Hotel Transylvania Transformania. I'm not sure why. I'm a little bit late to the party. This released on January 14th. I was busy watching The House around that time. We're starting to get reviews. We're starting to get videos up on YouTube about this movie, and at least from what I've seen so far, it seems to be one of those things where, I don't want to say dogpile, but I'm sure that a lot of people will be making videos about how this is just awful, and I saw one thing that was like, oh, that's an animated disaster and all this kind of stuff. I don't necessarily disagree with the core concept. This is not a very good movie. I don't think anyone would be super surprised to hear that, especially if you're not like 8 or 10 years old. There aren't too many reasons to check this out just for yourself. So here's the thing. Hotel Transylvania, it is what it is. In terms of budget, I looked up the budgets for all 4 movies. It's around $80 million per movie, and then we add for marketing, but production, around $80 million. So that's in the ballpark of like the Illumination movies, and they're famous for spending as little as they can, in order to still create something that looks professional. It's nowhere near the high-end Sony stuff. In terms of scores, I went ahead and I grabbed the Rotten Tomato scores, obviously critic and audience scores for each of the 4 movies, and really, there hasn't been that much movement on the critic side of things. If anything, I think the expectations dropped a little bit as the series has gone on, so they're just like, well, whatever. It knows what it is. It's fine. It doesn't have to break new ground. It's fine for what it is. So those scores have stayed pretty consistent, and then the audience scores have dropped pretty substantially. I would say it's not like complete devastation or anything. In general, I know this is a relatively small sample size compared to everyone who's watched every one of these movies, but in general, people seem to just be getting tired of the series. I'm not surprised by that at all. As for my view on the Hotel Transylvania movies, like, I watched the first one a long, long time ago, and by the way, that first one released in 2012, so we've had almost 10 whole years that the Hotel Transylvania series has been a thing. Quite a long time. Visually speaking, they haven't really updated the look all that much. The character models look pretty much like they did in the original movie. Textures and everything on character models are very basic. Everything's very smooth and plasticky. But here's the thing. Those first 3 movies were all directed by Genndy Tartakovsky. If you're into animation, you probably already know the guy. He was behind Samurai Jack. He worked on Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls, and he even did a mock-up kind of thing, like a test animation thing for a Popeye movie that he wanted to do because he loves Popeye. He loves golden era American animation, and that's very, very clear in his work. Even the stuff that he's just directed, everything is about character movement, and there's so much great visual comedy, and there's so much energy in the animation. It does kind of feel like a more modernized version of, that classic era of animation where character animation was it. The backgrounds were just whatever. It was all about the crazy things that the characters were doing. Tons of squash and stretch and weird contortions and all these different things going on. That's still here. By the way, Genndy did not direct the 4th movie. He's not involved. He does have a credit on the screenplay, and then the other giant, the other notable name who just said no, I guess, is Adam Sandler. He's not here. They have someone else doing the voice of Dracula, and it's not like I felt like Adam Sandler was ever really bringing something that spectacular to the role of Dracula, but Adam Sandler just didn't bother. I don't know what it was. I guess maybe too many lines. He just didn't feel like it. He feels like he just has enough money. Who cares? He's not here. I didn't feel the absence too much, but it does make you view a project differently when some of the big names who have been associated with the franchise in the past just opt out, basically. But what? This is background. Whatever. The movie itself, it's very boring. It's very boring, even for me. And I like Satan Tango. I mean, like, I wouldn't put it on for fun, but it's all right. I can deal with slower pacing. This is just a boring movie. I don't think the premise is all that exciting. It's very little to keep you engaged. And if you're a kid, I cannot imagine kids being glued to the screen here. I don't think the story, I don't think the screenplay are really anything worth talking about all that much. Now, that said, I mentioned that other people are calling this a giant disaster. It's the worst thing, whatever. It's not a disaster. It's really not. It's just mediocre. It feels lower budget. I was not able to find a budget for the 4th movie. I mean, I would guess that it's around the same budget as the others, if not a little bit less, especially if they knew that this wasn't going to be going out to theaters and it was going to direct to streaming instead. I think it's really worth pointing out that if we're specifically looking at this as a piece of animated media, that's what it is. there's still some really fun animation here. Who knows, maybe some other reviewers are mentioning that. I think it's definitely worth pointing out. And again, it's just character animation, environments, whatever, but the way characters move, it does not seem low effort in any way. My gosh, just fantastic. Lovely energy to the movement. Different characters will have slightly different ways of moving, even though it's all kind of in that same hyper-exaggerated cartoon style. And that was definitely the part of the movie that impressed me the most, and more or less impressed me throughout the whole runtime. If you pay attention to that, you'll probably have a much better time. And I've said this before about a few different things, but honestly, watch it on mute. Watch it with the sound off. Even then, I don't think it's really worth paying attention to for 90 minutes. It is very boring, even if you're only getting the visuals. But no, if you want to experience it in any way, or if you're just kind of like morbidly curious, watch without the sound. You do not need to worry about the story. You do not need to worry about the dialogue. Just watch how the characters move around, how they interact with their environments. But obviously that doesn't make it a good movie. That doesn't make it an especially interesting movie. That's just one little element of what makes up animation. No, it's not a disaster. It's definitely not good. For the most part, I just think it's very, very middle of the road. It does feel cheaper too, in terms of tone and sort of atmosphere and everything. It definitely feels more like a TV show. Kind of felt like a couple episodes of a TV show, and that's about it. Anyway, it just feels like lower stakes. You're not that invested in the character drama, or at least I wasn't. It has that usual like Sony product placement and stuff, which just always feels awkward. Specifically, they keep showing the nice cell phone that just looks like a real life cell phone, and I'm pretty sure it's this one here that I found online. It costs $2,000. You can have this cell phone. Apparently, it's very nice, according to Sony. There's really not too much else to say about this. I do have respect for the people who worked on the movie. I do think that the animation team and whoever was working on character animation, I really think was putting in a whole lot of effort, and they did a very good job. It's important to acknowledge that, and instead of just, taking a nuke to the whole thing and saying, well, I didn't have a good time with it, so every aspect is terrible. No, not really the case. That's my take on Hotel Transylvania 4, Transfermania. So many syllables. Thanks for stopping by.